Welcome to Teaching Truth. Lukewarm but loved. Lukewarm but loved. And though the church in Laodicea had a reputation of being lukewarm, Jesus loved the church in Laodicea. Lukewarm but loved. And Jesus had a few things to say to the lukewarm church in Laodicea, things that were said out of love for the church in Laodicea. Let's read what Jesus said to the church in Laodicea. He said this, "I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire, so that you could become rich, and white clothes to wear, so that you can cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put on your eyes, so that you can see. Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline." And it was because Jesus loved the lukewarm Laodicean church, he rebuked and disciplined them. But he did so out of a heart of love. The words written in the letter are not angry words per se, but they are words of love. And when God chastens, rebukes, disciplines us, he does so out of a heart of love, because God, Jesus, loves not only his church, but he loves his children. Many of us, I'm sure, will recall when we were younger of how we were disciplined. And if, like me, you were brought up the hard way, you'll recall that even though at times it hurt and it was difficult, you knew you were loved so much. And Jesus wanted to remind the lukewarm believers in Laodicea that they were loved so much. He loved them so much that he didn't want them to continue down the lukewarm path. And so Jesus deliberately uses pictures, uses imagery that they would be familiar with to indicate to them what he wanted to bless them with, how he wanted to express his love. Now remember what the city of Laodicea was famous for: its wealth and its wool and its waters and its wonders. Hold that in mind as we read of what God was going to bless them with. He said, "Buy from me gold refined in the fire, so that you can become rich." Now remember, this city was known for making gold coins that no doubt filled their pockets. This city was a wealthy city. And I'm sure the people sitting in the church in Laodicea were probably dressed in some of the finest clothes in those days which money could buy. This was a rich city, the Los Angeles, as it were, of its day. So with this first suggested purchase, Jesus was saying that they needed to stop trusting in money and begin trusting in him, to buy from him gold which was refined in the fire, so that they become rich. He was saying, you think you are rich, but actually spiritually you're poor. You need true wealth that's only found in a real and deep and meaningful relationship with me. He was speaking to a wealthy city. Remember that the woolen trade in the city was used to make garments. And so Jesus said, buy white clothes. Remember that the wool was black in Laodicea. And so Jesus quite deliberately says, buy white clothes to wear to cover your shameful nakedness. Now this would have caused their ears to perk up because the city, as we said, was famous for its woolen garments. And yet Jesus is effectively saying here, you're naked. You actually think you're wearing the best. But actually, and pardon me saying this, you're actually sitting in your birthday suits. You're no better than the emperor with no clothes. Put simply, Jesus is saying to the church here in Laodicea and the church now that everyone is morally and spiritually naked before him. We all have secret sins deep within that no one else knows about. But get this, God knows. God knows. And no matter how well we might dress, no matter how well we might put on a facade or a mask, God sees right through us. As the prophet Isaiah said, our own righteousness is nothing but filthy rags. And so what we need to be is clothed in the righteousness of Christ. We need our robes, our lives, our actions, and our attitudes, as it were, washed clean in the blood of the Lamb. And so the invitation, the counsel to the church in Laodicea was to buy white clothes, pure clothes to wear, to cover your shameful nakedness. The church at Laodicea would get it because they were used to dealing in garments. And so Jesus, talking about gold and money and garments, he was talking in a language that they would understand. And finally he says, buy salve to put on your eyes so that you can see. Once again, Jesus was speaking in a language they would get. Speaking in the everyday language and experience of a Laodicean living next to the medical centre renowned for its eye medicine to get his message across. You see, their spiritual eyes were messed up with a worldview a bit like a cataract. They couldn't quite see properly. The wealth of their town had blinded them, so they could no longer see themselves as they really were. They could no longer see sin as sin. And so Jesus was saying to the church at Laodicea, buy spiritual salve to see clearly and to refocus. Get an eyesight test, guys, as it were, a spiritual eyesight test, and focus on that which really matters. Get your spiritual eyesight corrected. To quote the hymn, they needed to turn their eyes upon Jesus. They needed to look full in his wonderful face in order for the things of earth to grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Jesus counseled the believers at Laodicea, the lukewarm believers, to buy from him gold refined in the fire so that they could become rich, to buy white clothes to wear to cover their shameful nakedness, and to buy salve to put on their eyes so that they could see. He spoke in a language using imagery that they would get and understand. Is Jesus speaking to you, to us, today, in a language that we are understanding, that we can get? Though we may be lukewarm, the reassurance from the letter to the church in Laodicea is that Jesus loves us so much.